So this is a guide to how to do speedruns for Amazing Spider-Man, released in 1990. Particularly going to be demonstrated on the DOS version. However, most of this should be applicable to the Amiga version. If I know that it will not be applicable to the Amiga version, I'll try to state that, and presumably other versions will have similar caveats where probably, but not necessarily guaranteed applicability to the other versions. So, first off, what we have here is the pretty sure Spider is the default directory name. I'm not sure if there's other installed directory names. That's just what mine has always been. But launch with Spidey.exe. It was originally developed by Oxford Digital Enterprises in United Kingdom in association with Paragon Software. In the DOS version, you have a variety of color options. For VGA and EGA are the same. It's just for people who, like, I have the VGA card, so why am I selecting EGA? Well, if you select VGA, you're getting the EGA graphics anyway. They're backwards compatible. So that's that, and gives you some Tandy. It's its own graphics adapter, but same basic color setup, and then there's the 4-color mode for CGA style graphics. So with the controls, you can toggle your sound effects on or off if you so desire. The sound effects are useful for knowing if you have triggered a switch, for instance. Some of them are hidden switches that don't have any visual cues for whether they've been triggered or not, so sound only. So not necessarily that disability friendly for people who are deaf, but a lot of things were not necessarily all that friendly for that back in the day. You can select from joystick or keyboard controls. I'm just using keyboard controls. You can use the cursor keys, which is your standard up, down, left, right. You are also able to use your numpad, if you have numpad, to do convenient diagonals, which is something that a lot of people are not necessarily familiar with, apparently. I've encountered some people who were not initially aware that you could use the numpad. Numpad is my preferred way of going about it. And then you can also do QA for up, down, and OP for left, right if you have no numpad or directional keys, and you just have your standard keyboard portion. And then the spacebar is what does firing, your web shooter. In the speedruns, you're not allowed to use the speed up or slow down for the speedrun.com board. So whatever you do, don't change the default speed. And so long as you have either a physical machine that you're running on that has internal timer, it will automatically do the timing to be the correct amount regardless of how fast your computer is. On my emulator here, I just have it as fast as possible, clock speed kind of thing, but since it has the integrated timer, it clocks the speed appropriately. If your computer is old enough that it doesn't have that speed, you can speed it up for particularly slow machines, or slow it down if it's a little bit too fast but it didn't have the internal clock. So that's what the speed up and slow down things are. And as I stated, those are not allowed in the speedruns. So I'm just going to select the VGA graphics, and in the version I have, American release, it has this nice little comic intro. If you have like a European release, it might look a little bit different, and it'll give you like a selection of which language you want, because European releases will always give you language selection. There might have been a law or something of requiring that, but I don't think it actually changed anything within the game for the European release. But you still have the option of selecting languages. So you have the high score thing. So you can just play a new game, restart from whatever take you were most recently get to, kind of thing, or exit out of the game. So we'll just start a new game. If you notice on the side of the screen, I have a little thing that should light up for when I press keys. So press space bar and Spidey gets ready to shoot a web, and if I just press a direction, he shoots a web in whatever direction I press in. And moving around, you can see me pressing a key and stuff happens. So that should be helpful for telling exactly how some of these maneuvers are being done. So you have your basic movement, where you can like walk along things. You can get into a corner and trying to walk further, you just don't move. However, if you like do a diagonal up, you can climb up a short little step like that. Or if it's a longer thing, you just start clinging to the wall. And if you're stuck onto a wall, you walk in the direction you're going. So on a wall, your walk forward or backward is just you pushing into the direction that you want to move to. And then if you're on a corner of a thing, you can just press in the direction along the corner and you climb onto that corner. On the corner, you can climb onto the direction, kind of thing. And the first part of the game is just climbing onto this little helicopter. There's a invisible switch on the middle of the rotors that causes it to go up. And then you can like climb onto here. And how the game normally would progress is you've opened up this little thing that I'm jumping across, and you would normally crawl down into that. None of the speedrun routes actually have you crawling down into that, even though that's the normal way you do the game. You would continue along the top here. Jumping like this makes you go a little bit faster. So whenever there's a long little section where you can just continue going instead of doing a slow walk, doing this little jumping maneuver makes you go a little bit faster. So speedruns, it's useful. In the any percent category, you would go up here, trigger that switch there, then you would web into here, where you'd then fall down through the side wall into Mysteria's end, be able to quickly web. You hit the switch and drop them, and if you do all that properly, you can get a sub 30-second completion time for any percent. The way that that works is because of a series of interesting programming features. So whenever you have whenever you're in a room in the game, you have the current room, and then there's basically references to what room is to the left, what room is to the right, what room is above you, and what room is below you. These are fixed for all rooms. They do not change at all. What can change is what room you transition to when you leave from the above, below, left, right. So, as you can see in for Black Thunder, I entered into it via foyer, and the switch at the top of the elevator trip switches you between exiting off the bottom via foyer or Mysterio's End. But there's a difference between how the top of foyer and Mysterio's End look. You can see the top of foyer, there is no wall at the top here. So if you're to fall from Black Thunder into foyer, there's no wall here, and it's not going to stop you. However, on Mysterio's End, if you were to fall from the top into Mysterio's End, there should be a wall here. Since the default screen below Black Thunder is foyer instead of Mysterio's End, Black Thunder thinks there is no wall there when you exit to the bottom of the screen, but when it does the transition, that switch says you should actually be going to Mysterio's End. So if we do this, fall perfectly fine, because no wall there. And if we go to the thing, cause the switch to be triggered, and do that same thing, oops, you start clipping through that wall, because as far as the neighboring screen is concerned, there is no wall there. As far as the screen transition is concerned, you should appear in Mysterio's End. So let's do that where you actually do the clip. So we transition, and you're falling through there, and you can quickly defeat Mysterio. So let's start game again. So how it usually goes is quickly jump up there on here, then you can launch yourself up here to get a little bit quicker, and do a little jumpy thing here, do a little web there to make it a little bit of a better transition, go up here, then as soon as you trigger it, you do your little web thing there, orient yourself, and then web him to make sure he doesn't walk off the electricity. And that's basically how the 80% run goes, with a little explanation of why the transitioning from Black Thunder into Mysterio's End works, so that you can just transition through the wall. And it's because it thinks foyer is the room below Black Thunder, but when you do the transition, it transitions you to Mysterio's End, and you just are already in the wall. Okay, so now doing the 80% no Black Thunder skip. Black Thunder skip is the entering into Mysterio's End to defeat Mysterio by way of the Black Thunder screen. Instead of that, one way of doing it that works for going quickly to progress through things is this little trick that clips you through a floor. So you diagonally jump through that, and you clip through the floor and into this area. Allows you to quickly get to the switch over here, but you need to open the gate at the bottom. Then you can do a little thing there to clip through the wall there. These clips work because when Spider-Man does his web, as you're transitioning, so you're moving through a jump kind of pattern, and you're transitioning between just a normal jump and being pulled by your web. The calculations for whether you are going through a surface or not get a little wonky, and you're allowed to clip into surfaces. So any surface that is Spider-Man can't cling to it, you can clip going to the left by simply jump, crouch, and do a web thing like that. And that works for basically any surface. Some areas where the gravity is a little bit weird, it takes a little bit more finagling to get it to work. On a room like Midnight where the gravity is fairly normal, it works relatively easy. But basically any vertical surface that is one tile wide, you can just clip through pretty easily, like that. So you'd clip around through there, and then you hit that switch, and you're able to then proceed over here and get into the lift. So once you're in here, it's basically you can either do the hopping kind of maneuver to quickly get through, or a way that is slightly quicker but relatively easy for a person to mess up is when you enter and get in here, you cling onto this and you do a big swing like that. That allows you to cross that gap slightly quicker than the hopping technique. So if you notice in my speed runs where I'm crossing through this area, I sometimes in the earlier ones I'll do the hopping technique. In my later ones I'll use the swinging technique because it is slightly faster. And then once you get here, you would be just climbing along the wall here and then across the ceiling, because webbing from the ground up to the ceiling is slower than climbing along the wall. In principle, if you're really good at swinging on the web, you could swing from the left wall over to here, either one big swing or a couple small swings maybe, and probably be able to get across this a little bit faster, but it's a lot more consistent and reliable just by crawling along the ceiling. Then here you do a little bit of jump and activate the switch, and then you basically just continue along climbing kind of like this. On the DOS version, the timing there is you probably should wait a little bit for the moon, because otherwise you hit it. On the Amiga version, it actually times out perfectly fine that you can just go quickly and directly, and then climb onto the gargoyle, and then here, and once you're up here, you're going down into this area, and then you proceed through Mummy's Revenge. Specifically on the DOS version, this does not work on the Amiga version. There's a little skip that you can do, where if you proceed up here, and like this, and get to here, the room above Midnight, because you can see Spidey's head can go into another room above there. The room above Midnight is Starry Starry Night. So Starry Starry Night, if you jump up, shoot a web up, and then cling onto the virtual wall up there, you enter into Starry Starry Night, and the room below Starry Starry Night is Bad Moon Rising. So if we go back to our diagram, when we're in Midnight, the room above Midnight is Starry Starry Night. But once we transition to Starry Starry Night being the current room, the room below Starry Starry Night is Bad Moon Rising. So we quickly get into Starry Starry Night, and then the room below that is Bad Moon Rising, and we can just get there really quickly. And the way that we do that is that the room that is the virtual room over here that isn't properly defined, in the DOS version, it is effectively just a solid block of mysterious stuff that when you're in the corner like that, you kind of into the, so from top corner here, you're kind of into here, but technically you should be able to touch whatever is over into this room. You can kind of cling onto that and pull yourself up into the above room when you wouldn't otherwise be able to, by jumping up, webbing to get a little bit extra, and then clinging onto the wall to pull yourself the last bit over the way. And of course, once you get into there, it becomes the current room, and whatever is the room to the right of Starry Starry Night suddenly becomes what you would be clinging to, which the room to the right of Starry Starry Night is just also Starry Starry Night. So you're clinging on to nothing and you just fall back down into the room below Starry Starry Night, which is Bad Moon Rising. So, once you're into Bad Moon Rising and get into Mummy's Revenge, you want to land on this particular spot. You can do that either by riding that little thing down and jumping to get here, or the way that I oftentimes will do it is when I transition down from that, I basically do maneuvering to get onto here, and then I just jump sideways, and that lands you, or jump down sideways, and that lands you right there where you need to be. Then there's a trick that another streamer by the name of Sarvitz came up with here, where by being in this particular location, you jump, hit that, and then, well, how it would usually work is jump, hit that, jump again, and you would, so when you jump again, you would hit that and you're automatically starting to climb these steps. What Sarvitz specifically did is slightly different, and what I'm doing is a small modification on what they did, but that's the general gist of it. Jump up. You need to make sure you do the webbing at the correct point in time, otherwise, there we go. Then you do that again and you hit your web the second time. When I'm not doing it in the flow, I don't necessarily get it. How I had previously done it was a little bit slower, where instead of jumping down there, how I had previously done it was go around here, jump over here, and then just web, and then proceed around. So, but that ends up being a bit faster if you just jump down here, jump and do the diagonal webs up, and then you're just automatically climbing up through here. Once you're here, you go along and then do a diagonal. I like to try and do it this way, do a diagonal web there, then go back over here, web that, and then continue along. And you can see how I do that. Then you come back up here. I cling onto the ceiling to hit those switches the second time, because I also need to get a good shot to send the gargoyle on the right-handed screen down by activating it with a shot from the web. So then you go through here, go down, and then there's basically just hold the button like that and you kind of go like that and go up, hit the web to activate the switch, and the area down there becomes open to you. So you then go down here, make sure you're standing up, web across, web across. So the rat down there is going to flip the switch for us. So we just have to get up here and be ready to climb into this area. Stand up and then hit that switch twice. Doesn't matter that the graphic up there appears broken. The main thing is, since we don't want that blocking our way when you come back, we hit it twice to get it back up there. Then we climb down. No, that was a little bit sloppy. That's not how I like to do it. So, how I like to come back is, so drop down here, and there, web. That was sloppy again. Okay. So, let me do a proper route. Okay, so drop down here, come over here, make sure at the end here, swing over, land on the edge there, swing up, and then immediately link onto the bottom there. That's a pretty fast way of getting back across that, if you can make sure you don't mess up. Whenever I try and explain stuff while I'm doing these things, I oftentimes mess up more than really should. So then you can come here, do this, get that back up there so that you can cling to the side of it, and then you're going to want to launch yourself back across, because launching yourself across like that is a faster way of crossing instead of just crawling across. So if you do the same technique as before, where you just, some people call this a torpedo, you notice that Spider-Man was facing down when he attaches to the bottom there, and he has to have an extra little half cycle to face back up to get up. That wastes a little bit of time. So there is a different way that How Do You Play Live kind of came up with, I guess by accident, where because of different inputs, didn't necessarily see how I accomplished that move, came up with a different way where just kind of does a combination of inputs where does a twerk a couple of times and then starts going back and forth. But as you can see, when Spider-Man gets to the bottom there, he is already facing up and immediately goes into his climb up the steps animation. And since jumping off of it and whatever he's doing in the meantime doesn't change his speed at all, he can do this little twerk maneuver, and that's perfectly fine. What's important is he's in the correct position to climb directly up. So for that part, it actually works a little bit better for How Do You Play Live's technique. And then you just kind of proceed up along here, and we enter into the room that is above us. First I'll show how relatively straightforward way of going about this room, where you just proceed up, cling to the ceiling of this so that you can then proceed over and cling to the ceiling again, proceed over, and kind of zigzag up through here. So that you get to the top of Bad Moon Falling. And when you get to this last turn, the moon starts to roll down, and you kind of just, you're probably expected to run away from it, but you can just jump over the moon. and then you can proceed into the next little area here, where it's take 2. The interesting thing, though, is you notice there's another open ceiling up here, and the thing above the open ceiling is Starry Starry Night again. But so it has the interesting feature where it has changed the room that you transition to below to be Bad Moon Falling instead of Bad Moon Rising. They did that because they knew that you could get up there and without too much difficulty. But if you walk to the side, your head is bumping into that virtual diagonal room. So you're right up at the corner and your head is bumping into this block on the DOS version. On the Amiga version, this room is effectively just empty space, so it works differently, which is why the skip I showed you where you cling onto the wall up there doesn't work on the Amiga version. I should have mentioned that when I was talking about that. But there is a area over here that you can walk into. That happens to be Starry Starry Night. For who knows what reason, they put Starry Starry Night to the left of this room. I have no idea why they did that. It should have just been the default fully blocked out room. So, since Starry Starry Night is over there, and since these walls are slick, and it's just one block thick, you can do that same little glitch through the wall. Since I'm going to the left, since it going to the right, and there's another wall on the other side of it, I can't really glitch through that wall, which if you could would probably be even quicker. So a different way of doing this is, instead of going up through this zigzag, is to, when you enter the room down here, currently this room is kind of glitched out because you're not expected to be able to exit out the top right before the moon gets all the way to the bottom. So I exited out, came back in, it reset a few things, and the moon is kind of weird now. So this is a slick wall, and it's only 1 square thick. So I can do the little thing where jump up, and I'm now glitched into the wall. And since I'm glitched into the wall, the room to the left of me is Starry Starry Night, and currently Starry Starry Night will transition you down into Bad Moon Falling. I can go directly from that bottom left corner into the top right corner, which is exactly where I need to go in order to get into take 2. So that skips that long zigzag thing if you are able to glitch through that wall. So there's 2 basic ways that once you get into your, so if you're doing the way where you jumped over the moon and you're kind of jumping from these things to these things, versus if you've dropped in and you're usually down here somewhere and you climb up out of it, you're at this point. Since that entire sidewall is slick, you kind of slide over that last little block there. So I'm sure you could enter it like that, that's fine. But an easy way of going about it is to just jump, cling to the top, and walk across to drop the clacker. which is perfectly, and then you jump down from here. Webs don't affect the clacker at all, so you have to actually have Spider-Man physically onto the clacker to drop the clacker. That's a perfectly fine way of walking across. The technique I've been trying to start using is jump, don't cling onto there, and kind of web sling across. And if you do that, well, you can get there a little bit faster. And then once you're done here, you just jump, web up, pull yourself up. And that's the same whether you had walked across the ceiling down onto the clacker or webbed across to get the clacker, same way. And importantly, you want to be facing right, because if you're facing left like this, you don't immediately transition into climbing out of this room. So it's a little bit faster to be facing right, which is fine because that's the direction you're naturally facing anyway. So it's actually a time loss to intentionally face the other direction. So you just jump up, web, and pull yourself up. And then if you just constantly hold up, you're clinging to the top of this, and then you can climb to the other side. You don't necessarily want to switch your input too quickly because Spidey will try to stand up and fall, but you want to be able to do it as quickly as possible. Then here, you're transition around the corner, and you just jump across, and you want to hold the buttons while you jump across, because if you don't hold the buttons properly, you land a little bit lower than you otherwise would. So if you notice, so I get here, I jump across, I land right above the slime. But if I'm here and I jump across and hold the button, I land one square above where the slime is. So it's a little bit faster to hold the button until you've actually stuck the landing, instead of just release and trust that Spidey sticks to the landing, which he will, but it's a little bit faster because you stick one square higher. Then you go back across. Once here, this is a constant motion so that the timing is right, where jump across, then do a couple of hops there, and web that button. That will be a nice little timing. Godzilla there gets stuck in perfectly convenient spot where it doesn't really do too much damage to you. So it's all good. And then you climb back up, do a little hop, and come down. So, oops. So let's do that again. So how I do it is I do a little web shot as I'm falling down. So I climb down along here, and then I just hold down as soon as I transition, do a little web shot, and then I go and right myself, and then I web and stick to the side there, which is perfectly good. Does things relatively quick. Climb up here, hit this button, starts going down, and then I jump over to the other side because it needs to be on the other side anyway. That delays exiting the screen long enough such that it remains in the situation where I need it to be for the elevator to the spaceship. So, webbed over here, do that, jump to the side, and the thing is going up and down, and then I'm over here, can climb along and do this kind of thing. other way that people do is when they've transitioned to here, they'll go and like climb up. They'll land on that, and then they can uh, just climb up like that. Which a little bit slower, but it works. But you need to exit that room when those flashy things are active in the on the side there, so that thing is going up and down. Normally you would probably freeze it. Then we get to this part where you're standing at the top of the skyscraper. You jump, hold space, and then do a diagonal web when you're right under the star to create the bridge. That allows you to get over here, and the loops around the side, and you're just over here now. Once you're here, you just get onto this and crawl in here, and now you're in here. You can let gravity pull you over here and land onto, cling onto the floor. If you let yourself get all the way into the button, you'll activate the button, but then it's a little bit of a tricky maneuvering to get it so that you can web the button at the top of the screen. If you go over there and then cling to the floor at the last moment, you're in perfect position and you've gotten over there pretty quickly. And then you just continue along over to that spot, web up, walk one over again, diagonal jump, then you're climbing in here, climbing around here, and you're going into hit all the buttons on the various different things here. Buttons, buttons, buttons. Then you climb along more. And the last button that I leave in my current run is the bottom left buttons there, because you need to go by there anyway. Previously I'd basically climbed along or climbed over to the slime to flip over, but inspired by How Do You Play Live Again, who their way was to climb all the way over here and then do a little tricky maneuver to just kind of fly into the button area over there. A little bit quicker way and stuff is to just basically drop down like that, and Spidey falls right onto the buttons. So that's just a quick jump off the ceiling, and you don't attach onto the ground at all because the gravity is pointed to the left at the moment on the screen. Gravity switches around as you hit buttons. So, and then you just walk up the side of the wall here, kind of jump over, stand up, and then walk through R2-D2. If you freeze R2-D2, you technically take a little bit more damage than if you don't freeze them, because you spend more time intersecting with the sprite if he's staying in place versus moving past you. And you're crouched on top of this little nub thing here. So if you kind of just walk off it like that, you end up right next to the button here. If you are in a kind of a falling animation and you do a web, but you're in between that button and the ceiling, because you're in a web and doing the webbing, your physics transitions a little bit, you can clip through a wall. If you don't get it right as you're falling the first try, you can kind of just jump again and try and do a webbing when you're falling. That's easier for beginners if you don't want to try and do the attempt on your first fall. How I like to do it is, if I can, when I'm initially falling on here, I like to try and do that, and then if I can get the timing right, do the webbing while I'm doing a diagonal up to the left kind of thing. So fall, then too late again. So that's how I like to do that, but whenever I'm explaining stuff, there we go. So, and ideally you should be holding diagonally up constantly through that, because you don't want to climb out on this side because you want to be going the other side. So if I held it longer, Spidey would have clung to the other side and I would have gone directly into climbing out this direction. And then a little thing is climbing up to this, onto the bottom there, and then jumping across here. A little bit faster way of getting to the corner here. And in order to open up the little section up there, at some point, this is probably the most convenient time to do it. You climb up in this area, and webbing this twice will open up that area and open up the path to the screen on the right. So, convenient time as any. Alternatively, you can do a more complicated pattern. I'd done that before I realized technically you only need to web that particular terminal twice. And then proceed over to here where the way I like to do it requires a bit of a timing, and it only works the first time you're entering the screen effectively. Well, I guess it technically works anytime. It just, in order to do it really fast, you do it the first time you enter the screen, where you jump up, cling here, and then as soon as he reaches right about there, do that, and if you time it right, he walks directly onto that platform. I didn't quite time it right. I was a little bit too late, which happens. So if your timing is a little bit too late, your backup strategy is, as soon as the Robocop gets to the side and is turning around, you jump and web the button on the way down. If you do that at proper timing, he walks onto the platform and you can proceed. And then similarly, as soon as he gets right about there, you jump up and turning around, you hit the button. Then you have to did it not quite the right time, but as soon as he does that, you basically have to jump up to the side, look to the side, and then you're kind of bouncing around, and then web, and that's how you can consistently get back down. If you try and do it other ways, it's kind of a hit or miss whether you can pull yourself down or not, but I found that way allows you to consistently get your way back down. But before you can do that, you need to get him transitioned to hit the button on the right hand side of the screen. But you need to, as soon as you get him over to that onto the top right hand side, and he starts walking over the button, you have to leave the screen as quickly as possible, because you need to get into the bottom right hand of the screen before he hits the button, because he'll shift the wall to a place where you can't exit the room if you're not already there. So I'll show you. So you jump up right about there, and as he's turning, then right about there you start your jump, and I did it at the wrong timing again. Oops. Okay. Let's try and focus on correct timing now. That and right about there. And why is it always bad timing when I'm trying to explain things? Okay, let's try this again. Jump, and as he's turning around, hit the button right there. There we go. Then do this. Web down, and we need to get around before and into that section. He doesn't continue moving while you're not on the same screen as him, so you can technically take as much time as you want. Do a little jumps here because those jumps are a little bit faster. Jumps again. Then this room, kind of just hold upright to do a little jump here because it's a little bit faster. And to here, then you do a little jump and web to get your extra momentum. Then go down here. Probably a little better way of doing that. Maybe hold just to the left. Messed that one up. I forgot to climb up around because you're supposed to climb up around. Here, let me redo that part. I was explaining things again and forgot my inputs. Yeah, so go around here and you hold this one to climb around, and then you're there. Then you do that. Then hold the diagonal to get around. Hold the diagonal to get around. Then, since I jumped when I did, the timing is such that I get right to the wall there as it disappears. When you're into this room, you just walk to the thing here, jump, and web up like 4 times, climb onto the side of the moon, it starts going over, and then you just jump across, cling to the side, and you're going to walk up perfectly fast. So the next room, you have to enter a video code on. The video code can be seen within Mysterio's End, but we don't need to actually check Mysterio's End because we already know the code. The fastest way I've seen to enter the code, or been able to figure out to enter the code, is the way I'm about to show you. It doesn't work the same on Amiga. Amiga, you have to enter the video code in a different way for it to be the fastest way, but I mostly play the DOS version, so I'm not as familiar with the Amiga one, because things move a little bit at different speed on the Amiga. So I get here, web to stop R2 from moving back and forth, because we're going to need them to be at a particular place at a particular time. Then we kind of continue around here. And we're basically forming an X pattern. And then we just follow behind them to turn this video monitor off. And we're back here. Then we can activate the code verification. Make sure he doesn't. And then this last part, we want to be on the top of this area. If you're on the bottom and try and start it, the timing doesn't work as well. So you're at the top, and you're here, about to enter Mysterio's End. There's a little ledge kind of thing. You climb up onto that, and then you just hold the 7 key for the diagonal, and you're jumping across, and that hits that, and you're right there. And the timing is such that if you enter from the top and do that 7 all the way across, right when you land there, you're right in position to hit the button, and Mysterio's at a good position to drop right onto the electricity. He's not going to walk off onto the other edge or anything like that. So, any questions on any of that? Oh yeah, another little thing at the beginning. When I start the game, I'm already holding upright, because as soon as Sprite appears on thing, I'm going to be jumping. So play the game jumping and do a little web thing so that he lands on that. If you do it at a good time, or that, that's no web at all, it kind of stutters and then you have to climb up there. If you do it whatever time, he kind of falls and starts off crouched here, and then you continue. If you do it at a little bit of a delay and a good time, you can start right there when he clings to the side. So, but the exact timing to get to cling to the side there immediately is a little bit finicky, and so. But yeah, if you can get it good, it I think saves a little bit. I haven't timed it exactly. So, any questions? How are you liking the input things? I don't know. How do people in chat like to input things? But it's mostly a tool for showing people in chat. So, yeah. And if you do the little left off jump so you land just to the second thing in there, you are in a perfect hopping trajectory to be right where you need to be underneath this too. So, and you can do the same trick if you want to quickly visit Black Thunder. There's that too. I don't know if there's anything else I need to explain for how the stuff works. So, I'm not sure if I did a good job explaining things or not. But I kind of explained things. I'll be editing that into hopefully a decent guide. Would be. I suppose I could go in and start talking about other interesting glitches and whatnot you can do in the game. Like, if you're in this room over here, so if you remember me saying if there's a slick wall over here, you can do the little jumping kind of movement. Since gravity is a little bit different in this room, you have to be a little bit different in your timings. So you kind of have to jump and wait a little bit before you glitch in. But you can glitch into the side of the lift if you do a little glitch left to a slippery wall trick here. Of course, once you're in here, it's kind of meaningless. Because this is just a little area that you're trapped into. But yeah, since that wall is slick, you can do the trick to glitch through it. Another interesting thing, if you do not open up this gate here, but then proceed to the left, because you can glitch through the top of this area with this. Find any new strats? Not since my most recent 80% no Black Thunder skip speedruns. So by not find more maybe. So by not opening that top gate there and proceeding through this to the lift, you can get the lift a little bit glitched. So enter into the lift, and suddenly that's not how the lift is supposed to look. The right area over there automatically switched over into kind of a blocked off thing. So exit, enter again, it goes and switches back. Weird how that works. So let's walk over there. Now we're over here. Oh, what happens if we walk back into the left? Oh, switch back again. But now we're stuck in the wall, which is an interesting little situation to be for you to find yourself in. So if you do a little jump, you're in your falling animation within a wall, so you don't land on the wall since you're already in it, and you fall into the basement. So that skips a little bit in and of itself, which is interesting. And then you can proceed with the game as if you've already gotten to the basement. And then there's a little glitch if you don't turn off the water as you're expected to. You can just walk across the top of the pipe, no damage. And by not turning off the water, this room is in a glitch state, similar to how the lift is in a glitch state if you don't open a particular switch or don't toggle a particular switch before entering the room. So there's a few things like that throughout the game. So I used the lift skip in my 30-minute roughly runs for 80% no Black Thunder before using the waiting room skip. But waiting room skips a whole lot more of the game, so it can do it a lot faster. Instead of 30 minutes, I'm gotten it down to 8 minutes 26 seconds kind of thing. So there's that. Doing the all rooms run, you use still use stuff like this. Interesting enough, you can actually use the Starry Night skip for an all rooms run, because you just kind of do this, where you go get Black Thunder, get into the Starry Night. The only rooms that you've skipped have been lift and take one. Now, when you go through the bottom section. So when you eliminate this and go down through bottom section, you're getting take one anyway. And when you fix the timerless void, get into the shaft, going to the basement, you go through the lift anyway. So technically, you still get all the rooms, even if you do the skip, but it's faster. So you can do an all rooms run with that Starry Night skip, and well, you've already gotten Starry Night as well, so you don't even have to worry about Starry Night. I haven't done a run like that yet. I still have my just kind of casualish, fast attempt at all rooms where I make a bunch of mistakes. I'll probably do a new all rooms run at some point to try and get a better time for that as well, but I haven't dedicated any time for that because that is a longer run. The current record I have for that run is 44 minutes about. Probably can get it down to like under 40 minutes, I would think, with better movement without making all the mistakes I did in the current record run, and adding this new skip and the Bad Moon Falling skip would also be perfectly viable in all rooms run because that you're not even skipping any rooms. So that would save a bunch of time implementing all those things. Let's see. So, like, this is another one of those slick walls that you're on the right-hand side of, so technically you can, oh yeah, the gravity in here is slightly different, so you need to do a slightly different timing, but you can glitch in through here and get yourself stuck in between that cross and the wall, and you're stuck. You can't do anything anymore. And technically, you can do it. Yeah, whenever it's a slick wall and you're wanting to go from the right to the left, you can use that little trick, and depending on the gravity of a room, you might have to do the timing a little bit differently.